An entire town covered in mud with air that's hard to breathe.
All of the furniture is destroyed. It's all piled outside.
See how residents in Madison County, North Carolina are recovering. Then WRAL travels along with the National Guard as they provide relief for others while facing huge challenges of their own.
Here's the front that's bringing us fall weather. I'll time it out. And how Hurricane Kirk could impact the North Carolina coast.
Aid and resources are pouring into communities in western North Carolina. Video like this showing volunteer pilots and all of these supplies taking these donated goods from the executive jetport in Sanford. Remember, you can donate by scanning that QR code at the bottom of your screen. I'm Dan Haggerty.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Morgan. Here are the latest developments with Helene. Within the last hour, we've learned of the more than 200 confirmed deaths. 72 are in Buncombe County. At least 100 people have died now in North Carolina, and that total is expected to climb as search crews have yet to even reach some of the communities where hundreds of people are still missing. A solemn reminder, the hurt and the heartbreak in these communities is only the beginning.
WRAL is, of course, committed to bringing you the stories of those hardest hit and sometimes most remote areas of western North Carolina. Today, WRAL's Eric Miller went deep into Madison County, where he found some of the worst conditions we have seen yet. He joins us live now in Marshall. And Eric, as if things couldn't get worse for the folks there, the air is considered a potential hazard.
Well, Dan, we talked with community organizers today, and they say one thing they want here is clarity. They want to know what exactly is in the mud and the dust that is all over this town. It burns your eyes. It has a smell to it. Keep in mind, we are downstream of Asheville and all of the water treatment plants that line the French Broad River. It's one reason why both our crew and so many people in this town are wearing masks. You take a look at some of this video here. Marshall was inundated from end to end. These floodwaters powerful enough to completely demolish some buildings. In others, it left up to 3 feet of mud in basements and on first floors. Some crews, in some cases, still pumping out water today. And we talked to a lot of people here in this town, including one man, Matt Jones, who rode out this flood on the top of a rooftop. This has been so hard for so many people to watch. Just take a listen to what he had to say.
One of the hardest things was seeing the parts of people's personal belongings that you knew it wasn't a business, it wasn't anything else. It was like that's from somebody's living room, and it's going floating by in the river right now.
And today, for buildings that didn't get taken down by this flood but were damaged, we have construction crews out here actually demolishing those buildings. Elsewhere, people with shovels, people with backhoes, with front loaders, they are loading up buckets of this mud, that going into the back of dump trucks to haul it away, get it out of here. But still, even with the progress that's been made since this storm hit, there is still so much to do in this community and communities all over western North Carolina. In Marshall, Eric Miller, WRAL News.
Eric, thank you so much. Deb, one community just is bad, if not worse than the next.
Yeah, it's just still so tough to see. WRAL has this interactive map online showing coverage from every community we've been to so far. Just visit WRAL.com/hurricane-Helene and hover your mouse over the locations to read more. Today, WRAL flew with Operation Airdrop volunteers as they brought critical supplies into western North Carolina. This nonprofit responds immediately after a disaster. Volunteers use their own planes and their own fuel to carry whatever supplies they can into areas with the greatest need. WRAL traveled to Ashe County, where conditions are so dire, supplies are delivered to victims by ATV. Coming up tomorrow on WRAL, we're talking to neighbors and volunteers all chipping in to help recover from Helene.
I'm Aaron Thomas in the WRAL Live Center, here to tell you that hundreds of thousands of customers in western North Carolina remain without power. Here's a current update right now at 5. You can see nearly 274,000 customers are without power. As we zoom into some of these western counties here, this gives us a breakdown on where most of that is impacted. We see number 1, more than 87,000 customers over in Buncombe County. Next, we also have Henderson County with nearly 47,000 customers. Keep in mind, this is a significant update. When Helene hit, you had nearly 1 million customers that were in the dark. We learned today from Governor Cooper that the goal is to have at least 90% of all the power in that region restored by Friday.
Aaron, thank you so much. 600,000 pounds of food and water distributed. Over 450 people have been rescued, and 100,000 plus pounds of emergency supplies have been delivered. And that is only a snapshot of the work being done by the North Carolina National Guard in the western part of our state this week. What you won't see, though, is how challenging these missions can be without gas, power, or cell signals. WRAL's Heidi Kirk traveled with a group of 10 soldiers from Rocky Mount to Asheville and has that story.
You might take for granted the ability to fill up a tank of gas or hop in the car and pull up the navigation.
Starting route to Asheville.
But for some people traveling in and out of Western North Carolina this week, those services aren't a given. In a group of 10 soldiers, there wasn't one who didn't want to be there. Telling me off camera, these moments are what led them to join the National Guard. The missions may look simple, loading up supplies from this warehouse in Weaverville and transporting them to the places hardest hit by Helene. But behind the scenes, this group has its own challenges.
There's challenges that we couldn't even have forecasted.
We caught up virtually with Lieutenant Colonel Bethany Barden. She gets daily updates from the groups on the ground.
One of the biggest challenges that we see is everything is so dynamic and it's happening, and sometimes the information is stagnant.
WRAL News experienced it firsthand, watching guardsmen struggle to communicate with emergency management due to lack of signal. We captured the 10-mile trek from Weaverville to Asheville, where we found just 2 bars of service to make calls. Everywhere you look, gas stations are closed, leading our group miles outside the city just to fill up. But it never stopped them, and the real story here became the resiliency. It's worth noting that many of the people headed out west to help were also staying overnight in locations without power or cell signal themselves. Heidi Kirk, WRAL News in Asheville.
As many as 1,000 active duty soldiers from Fort Liberty are ready to deploy to help with the relief efforts. During a visit to our state yesterday, President Joe Biden announced that the troops will join the North Carolina National Guard in delivering those supplies, food and water to isolated communities. Gilbert Bays will have that story ahead for you at 5:30. We do want to take a moment and thank everyone at home for all of your generosity during our WRAL Cares Telethon. Nearly 3,000 people took the time, many of them waited on hold or called multiple times, to then donate more than $735,000 for the relief effort in Western North Carolina. You can still add to that number. Wouldn't it be great to get over $1 million? It would feel so great. Scan the QR code on your screen right now. Go to WRAL.com and search help, and you can donate. There are also a list there you can find for ways that you can help to support the North Carolinians who are in so much need of that help right now. More than 8,000 people in the Asheville area were served free meals today. WRAL was there for it all. After the break, we hear from one man about his experience thus far. Plus,
it might look simple, but these little rectangles are what allow us to get information out about the devastation from Helene. Coming up, we'll explain how Starlink is changing the game.
Another day in the 80s, but I'm tracking a cold front out in the Pacific Northwest that will change that. If you like the summer heat, it's about to come to an end. I'll have the forecast coming up.
And a traffic update for you this evening over on the Durham Freeway. Everything is clear after a pretty serious accident that happened earlier this afternoon. Then we go over to I-440 on the Capitol Boulevard. You can see things are starting to move at a snail's pace during this evening commute. We know that one lane near Joan Franklin Road is closed at this point, so keep that in mind. WRAL News is back after the break.
It's a night of season premieres on WRAL at 8. Watch the season premiere of Law & Order, followed by the season premiere of Law & Order SVU at 9. Then at 10, stick around for the season premiere of Found, followed by WRAL News at 11.
So it's been about 6 days now, and we have shown you hundreds of videos of devastation. We want to take a moment and just kind of sit on this new video that was released from Asheville. This is Chris Faber, took this from his Third story of his home, of an apartment, giving you an idea of how high this water is. He says he saw trees and shipping containers and entire buildings flow by. The building that you see here, that roof, the greenish roof here, the owner said that she thought it was a local tea business. She thought by moving everything about 3 feet off the ground, that would be enough to avoid the floodwaters. She had no idea that this would be what happened. That is her entire business floating downriver, being swept away. We are hearing more and more difficult stories like this coming out of Western North Carolina tonight. The death toll has now climbed to 200 lives across 6 states. Our crews in Asheville today spoke with people in line at a food giveaway that served over 8,000 people. Trevor Smith tells WRAL the water rose too quickly last Friday to react.
We did receive an evacuation notice at 6:15 a.m., but the way that our house is positioned, there's only one way in and one way out. And at 6:15 a.m., the water was already a dozen feet over the bank.
Smith shared a story of helping his elderly neighbors to evacuate and then coming across others who didn't make it out in time. Thousands are still without power tonight. The State Board of Pharmacy is allowing pharmacists in Western North Carolina to provide 90-day emergency refills for certain controlled medications without needing authorization from a doctor. This rule is in place because doctors might be unable to provide services due to the ongoing emergency in the area. The rule covers Schedule 3, 4, and 5 medications. The exception will last until November 3rd with the possibility of an extension.
Elections officials in Watauga County say their voting equipment was not damaged by the floods. It's one of the first elections updates we've received from counties impacted by Helene. Election staff have been back in the office since Monday, and county officials say the security around the equipment and ballots has been maintained throughout the storm. Now they are working to determine whether usual voting sites will be available this fall. Well, you've seen the lights up in the sky before, right? Starlink satellites in a line moving across the sky. The Triangle even saw their launch into low orbit just a few months ago. WRAL's Sean Gallagher shows us those tiny lights flying above are now providing critical help down on the ground after Helene.
So this map shows how critical Starlink has been during this crisis. All of these little dots are some 6,000 satellites that travel around the globe every 90 minutes. And if you look in here near North Carolina, there's one always nearby, meaning those critical messages of hope are getting out. The visuals out of Western North Carolina are just unimaginable, even for the people who lived through it.
We didn't know how bad it is because we didn't know.
Maggie Watkins made it to a relative's house outside of Swannanoa.
Honestly, it's the whole community. Swannanoa's gone.
But thousands are still there, largely voiceless. Communications non-existent.
We're just desperate. We just want to know that we're okay.
These little white rectangles have been critical for our teams to get information out to the public about the damage from Helene. But more importantly, it's helping people connect with their loved ones impacted by the storm.
Obviously, communication is the hardest.
Maggie connected to a Starlink after the storm. It was the first time she could confirm that her family was okay, but also the first time she saw the destruction.
I couldn't watch anymore. That broke my heart, but also like all the messages were coming in at once. So it's a happy and it's a sadness all at once.
They're pretty darn reliable.
Starlink is allowing communications to get up faster than it would have before.
Because it's not prone to issues like weather or the chaos that we saw in the mountains.
WRAL remote broadcast engineer John Potts says it helps give people like those in Swannanoa a voice to the outside world.
You could connect a ton of people as long as they're just using their phones for a phone call or checking social media or things of that nature.
But hearing like just, we love you guys, we're thinking of you.
A simple solution.
It made us smile that our town's being loved.
With a tremendous impact. Sean Gallagher, WRAL News in Raleigh.
Boy, those smiles so important right now and all that devastation. Many of these systems have been flown in to help with communications, and they're pretty reasonably priced. It's about $300 for the unit and then $120 per month for service.
Let's check in with meteorologist Mike Mays, keeping an eye on the tropics. Mike, we certainly don't want to see anything out there with its sights set on our coast.
No, and nothing will come our way with a direct impact. Kirk is going to stay well out in the Atlantic. It's a Category 4 storm now with 130-mile-per-hour winds. There's Tropical Storm Leslie. Both will stay so far away that won't have a direct impact. But the swells are so large from Kirk that they will likely reach the east coast of the U.S. by Sunday, including North Carolina. Now, part of our coast tomorrow already in a high current risk. It's the Outer Banks that are in that. The southern coast is in a moderate risk like they were today. So if you're heading to the coast this weekend, you might notice the surf looking rather rough. Not good news for those houses at Rodanthe that are hanging on by a thread, so to speak. But this will pass us by, and that system in the Gulf only has about a 30% chance of developing still. So we're not too concerned about that. 79 right now out at RDU. 82 was our high today. Tomorrow we should be in the low 80s once again, and the 80s hang on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. But after that, they are gone. Temperatures out there right now, 72 at Roxborough, 79 at Southern Pines, and the dew points are in the 60s, but those are about to depart. And once they leave, they may not come back for quite some time. I've been sifting through model data and what I've seen on the American model through the 18th of the month. Once the dry air gets here, this kind of moist air doesn't come back, at least through the 18th. That would be good news if you're not a fan of the humidity. 6, 7, 8 o'clock, pleasant dog walking weather. Temperatures will be in the 70s by 8 o'clock, about 70 degrees. And we should be a little bit cooler tonight in the low 60s, maybe some upper 50s in our northern counties. So we have a big ridge of high pressure over us. That's going to keep us in the 80s. Here comes a front that'll make a run at us this weekend, a 20% chance for a shower Saturday, a little drop in humidity on Sunday. Then there is the game changer. And boy, there's a lot of cool air with that, and it's heading toward North Carolina. In fact, across Canada, all this blue you see here with this broad area of low pressure in the upper atmosphere is a lot of cool air. There's the first front moving down to the south and east, and by the time we get to Saturday morning, it'll be about to make its way through the area, and once it passes, we'll go from 85 on Saturday to 82 for the high on Sunday. Not a big change, but one you may notice, especially since the humidity will be lower on Sunday. But here's the game changer. So ahead of it on Sunday, we'll be in the low 80s. On Monday, we should be in the mid 80s with about a 20% chance for a shower. But once the front moves on by, the cooler air will begin to funnel in, so will the dry air. You're really going to feel it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And there may be reinforcing shots of some cooler air that come in after this one. And the American model is pointing to even cooler air as we get to the middle part of the month. And that would be appropriate because it is October and also state fairs coming up. So once the front passes, 75 Tuesday, Wednesday 73, Thursday 75, morning lows will be in the 50s. The coolest start may be Thursday morning. We're here in the triangle, we're at 50, but there may be some other locations, the cooler rural areas, that are in the 40s. So tonight, upper 50s to low 60s in our northern counties, some patchy areas of fog by daybreak, 61 at Sanford, 62 in Fayetteville, and then tomorrow we're back in the 80s, 83 in Raleigh, 86 in Fayetteville. Your 7-day forecast, our days in the 80s are coming to an end. They will likely last into Monday of next week with 85, and then there's your cooling Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. 20% chance for a shower Saturday, 20% on Monday. Those are really the only rain chances we'll see for quite some time.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we'll take it.
We need to dry out.
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Mike.
Still to come, the rescue and recovery effort underway by a big name from NASCAR.
We're in that area looking for people.
Greg Biffle speaks exclusively to WRAL as he utilizes his personal helicopter to get supplies to those in western North Carolina. You are looking live at Durham as you see the sun shining in the background, watching WRAL News, available on Hulu and the WRAL app on your TV or streaming device.
Well, speaking of the DBAP, tomorrow and Saturday, the Durham Bulls will be collecting donations for hurricane relief efforts during the NC State versus Duke Fall Fan Fest events. Friday's game starts at 5:30 and Saturday's event runs from 5 p.m. until 8 p.m. You can drop off water cases, baby formula, diapers, batteries, protein drink cases, even pet food. A full list of needed items is on the Bulls website.
The Carolina Hurricanes and their fans raised more than $279,000 for Helene relief at the Lenovo Center last night. It was a sold-out crowd. They were all there in the arena for the game. The team sold the tickets for $10 each, and all the proceeds will go to the relief effort. Funds were also raised through concession sales. There was a silent auction as well. The team says it will announce more fundraising efforts in the days to come.
Everyone is pitching in. A unique source of help is coming from former NASCAR driver Greg Biffle. His shop is near Charlotte, and he's also a helicopter pilot, and he's flying in to save lives in the mountains. Biffle is volunteering alongside Operation Helidrop. He's one of dozens of helicopter pilots flying into these remote, hard-to-land areas and dropping off supplies.
We're in that area looking for people that, you know, they're putting X's in their yards or they're writing SOS on the ground with whatever they can find.
Biffle was up in the air again today, and he says he's cleared his schedule to keep flying until everyone has what they need.
The Animal Protection Society of Durham is stepping in to help some displaced pets in the wake of the storm. This afternoon, volunteers drove to Winston-Salem. They rescued 20 cats and 8 dogs. The animals all came from Polk County, an area that we have seen some really terrible destruction. Each animal was evaluated upon arrival to be placed in the best foster home for each animal. Cattails Rescue in Chapel Hill is caring for 20 additional cats displaced by Hurricane Helene. 14 cats arrived from Esther Kitten Alliance Tuesday and all have foster homes. 6 more arrived Wednesday. The rescue cats adopt out an average of 30 cats each month.
Stocks continue to struggle as investors wait for the jobs report tomorrow. Today, the Dow lost 185 points. The S&P dropped about 10. The Nasdaq fell about 6. Ashley Rowe is here now with what's coming up at 5:30. Ashley.
Deborah, still ahead. Expectant mothers in western North Carolina are having to evacuate and find critical care elsewhere. That's because hospitals in Asheville still don't have water and are serving dozens more patients than they have room for with the use of triage tents. Hear from these future moms and the unknowns they're navigating next. Plus,
from Fort Liberty are ready to provide hurricane relief in western North Carolina, but I'll tell you why they're still here on post.